So a couple of videos ago I looked at what I feel are the 3 most important DSLR photography tips for beginners. And what I've been doing since then is taking each one of those 3 tips and going into it in a little bit more depth and giving you some good tips to get you started on those 3 tips. So let's get into it. Hi guys, Mandy here from the Photography Blog again, bringing you photography tips to help you take better photos. So today we're going to be looking at learning your camera. And what do I mean by that? Because let's face it, learning your camera is such a massive subject. So where do we start? So I thought I'd come up with 3 first steps for you to get you on the ladder to learning your camera and getting more out of it. So basically, the first step is holding the camera. Let me show you. If you're moving up from, say, a camera phone on your mobile phone or from a point and shoot, then you tend to have it away from you. You tend to be standing, taking a photo, holding it away from you, looking at the live view screen, and then obviously taking the picture. So when you move to a DSLR, something like this, an entry-level one, then it's obviously very different. It's a lot bigger, it's a lot heavier, and you can't really just stick one hand out and take the photo, you need both hands on it. So first thing to look at is holding the camera and how you hold the camera. Basically, shutter button for taking the photo is on the right hand side of the camera. So your thumb tends to fit around the back and your index finger will then just sit on the shutter button. Now, you don't want to hold it away from yourself, and it's obviously got an optical viewfinder. So what you want to do is to make use of that. I'd say, rather than using a lot of live view, obviously cameras have live view these days, which obviously makes you feel like it's more like a point and shoot or a mobile phone. But if you've got that optical viewfinder, I would use it, because if anything else, trying to keep the camera as still as possible is what you're after, and obviously holding it up to your face and looking through it obviously just makes it like a little bit more steady, because everything's in, your elbows are in, you're holding the camera with 2 hands, one for the shutter button. I tend to use the other one underneath the lens and cradling it like that, so it's quite a stable position. And then to look through the optical viewfinder as well, just bringing your head in and obviously touching the camera with it, just makes it quite a stable place to shoot from. And obviously from there, you're going to be moving on and then looking at tripods, because basically if you're going to use creative functions on this camera, which is obviously why you've got it, then you could be taking longer shutter speeds and stuff like that where you'll need a tripod. But then there's also tips that you need to make sure that your tripod is sturdy and stable and isn't moving either. But the first thing to do is to get used to holding the camera. Get used to how it feels in your hand and the weight, how the different lenses with a bit longer lenses and stuff like that can feel. But finding a nice comfortable position for you to hold the camera in and take the photos, that's obviously the first step to do. So number 2 is autofocus, and learning the autofocus system on your camera, because it will be different to what you're used to with a phone or with a point and shoot. Basically, they are autofocus points in your viewfinder that you'll be able to look through your viewfinder and you'll see a load of dots. Now on this one, it is an old Canon, it's an old entry-level one. It's only got 9 autofocus points on it. I know some newer entry levels still have those 9 autofocus points, but a lot of them have 20s, 40s, 60s, 80s, they have tons of autofocus points now. But when you look through your viewfinder and you'll see a load of dots in there, that's what they are, they're autofocus points. So to get them to autofocus on what you want them to do is to use the shutter button. Now when you take a picture, you obviously just press the shutter button and it takes a picture. To get it to autofocus, you half press the shutter button. So hopefully it'll do it. Right, if you can hear, I've half pressed the shutter button and you'll hear the lens move, which is autofocusing, and you'll hear a little bleep. There we go. So what that's doing is, as you look through the optical viewfinder, you'll see one or a couple of those points will light up red. When they light up red, you know that the camera has used that point to focus on. Excuse me. So as you half press the shutter button, you'll see the lens will move to autofocus and you'll hear the bleep, and as you're looking through the viewfinder you'll see which one lights up red. So that's how you know which point the camera is using to focus on. So one or two things. How do I get it to autofocus? Well, on these Canon models, basically it's done via the lens. So if you can see there on the lens, you've got AF and MF, and I've got it flipped to the AF position. AF is autofocus, MF is manual focus. So in this video I'm talking about autofocus, so we'll stick with autofocus. So it's in the autofocus position, so as I half press the shutter, it is going to autofocus. So basically, if you're autofocusing with your camera and it's not picking the point that you want it to pick, it's not picking the point of the image that you want, so if your subject's on the left and it's only picking the autofocus points on the right, that's not going to work. So what we need to do is we need to, in that case, probably the best thing to do is to manually pick it. There's two ways of doing that depending on what your camera can do. If you've got a touch screen on your camera and you're able to, you can pick the autofocus point just simply by pushing on the touchscreen exactly where you want the camera to autofocus. For those of us who don't have that on our cameras and we don't have that ability, we can pick an autofocus point, and we can do that on the back of the camera.
So what we're going to do to pick our autofocus buttons is we're going to use this button over here. Basically underneath you'll see a funny little set of squares, and that's basically telling you it's to do with the autofocus points. So what we're going to do is we're going to press this button, and what it will do is it will bring up on the back of the screen the autofocus points that we can pick. It goes off, there we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select these. This is obviously going round and it's showing that you can select each one individually, or you can select the centre one, now, or all of them even. Now the centre one is basically the most sensitive. This has only got 9 autofocus points, and I know a lot of other cameras, more modern cameras, have got a lot more autofocus points now. But this still will give you an idea of what to do, and if you want the most sensitive, then on this one with 9 autofocus points, it's the centre one. Now obviously, it keeps flipping back, it will flip back, it'll think you've chose it. So yeah, basically you just use this dial, and this dial, there's the shutter button, and here's your dial here. That will go left, whoops, sorry, it will go left and it will go right. Okay, now as I'm going left or right, I'm picking the different autofocus points on the camera. So you pick whichever one you want, the centre one or whichever, and then obviously you've got all. And when you've done picking them, you use the set button or the OK button or whichever it was to pick the one you want, and it will go back to normal screen, and then you can now start taking photos using that exact autofocus point. The only thing I would say here is just be careful to not forget to put it back to all. If you've picked the middle one, or you've picked one of the other ones, don't forget to go back in and make sure it's set to all the focus points. Otherwise you will only have, it'll keep doing that from there on.
So that's a good entry introduction into AF points and autofocusing. It gives you an idea of how to autofocus and what the camera is doing and what it's using to get that autofocus. So with that little bit of knowledge, hopefully that's going to give you more of an insight into how to get your images focused how you want them, or your subject of your image in the focus that you want. So hope that's a good start for you, and I think that's it for autofocus. And the third and final step is learning the modes on your camera, what they do and what you can do with them as well. So basically that's all done through the mode dial on the top of the camera, and what I'll do now is I'll go through all of them quite briefly, and then I'll let you know what I think is the best one to start with, the best one to try out and use at the beginning. Now another thing to say before I carry on is if you want to go out and shoot in autofocus, in automatic mode, put it on the little green square and shoot in automatic mode. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that to start with. Basically if you want to concentrate on, I will get my words right in a minute. If you want to concentrate on composition and lighting and learn more about those and get better at those before you start to worry about modes on cameras and stuff like that, then that's absolutely fine, and putting it in auto mode will be fantastic to do that. You can just go out straight away, start start shooting, start looking at composition, start looking at your lighting, and learn those things first. But if you've had enough of that, or you've got a little bit bored and you want to learn more about the camera, then it's basically choosing one of the semi-automatic modes is probably the best place to start. And what I'll do is I'll go through those now individually.
Right, so we're looking at the mode dials on the camera, and basically on this camera you'll see we've got quite a few little pictures around this side, and we've got quite a few letters around this side. So we're going to have a quick look at what each one means, and basically which ones can be used for what. Obviously this one here, it's a green little rectangle with an A in it, and that basically denotes automatic mode. So if automatic mode is what you want to use, then feel free to use that. That's absolutely nothing wrong with using that whatsoever. But you know, if you're getting a little bit bored of that and you want to move out of that mode, then you can have a look at more semi-automatic modes on the camera and what they do. So P mode stands for program mode, and it's kind of a halfway house in between the semi-automatic modes and the automatic mode. It just never worked for me. If it works for you, then please feel free and try the program mode. But for me, it was more these next two modes that I was interested in. Now, TV mode, it's not your TV, don't worry. It basically stands for shutter priority mode. On other cameras like Nikon's, Sony's and stuff like that, you'll see it as an S rather than TV. It's only Canon that uses TV, and to be honest, I've got no clue why they use TV. But there you go. So, shutter priority mode. Now what that does is it tells the camera how long it's going to keep the shutter open for. So you can pick different, you'll see here on this side, you'll see it's in TV mode, and you'll see that I can change the length of time that the shutter is going to be open for. And that will obviously tell the camera how long the light gets to hit the sensor at the back. So shutter priority mode is good for when you're wanting to freeze action or you're wanting to show motion. So if a car race is going past, you can even freeze it so it feels like the car is totally stopped, or you can pan with it and you can show the motion. Same with waterfalls, where you can either freeze the water with the shutter speed, or you can slow the water down to a very creamy, very soft flow of water. So that's briefly what shutter mode does from the camera, from the point of view that it denotes how long the light hits the sensor for. And that's what the shutter does. So that's what that does, is that's saying 1/4000th of a second at the moment, and that's how long the shutter will be open for to take that shot. So that's a quick look at shutter priority. Next one is AV, and that stands for aperture priority. It can also be known as just A on the camera, and that basically changes the aperture. You've got AV on the back to show you that you're in AV mode, and you'll see the f-stop there, and you'll see that I can change the f-stop on my camera to pick the aperture that I want to pick. Again, using this dial at the front of the camera, just behind your shutter button, going left and going right, and then that will pick your shutter or your aperture depending on which mode you're in. Now, aperture priority, basically what that means is you're talking then about the lens, and you're talking about the aperture in the lens and how large or small you're going to make that aperture. And what that will do is that will denote how much light hits the sensor. So shutter priority is how long the light hits the sensor for, aperture priority is how much light can hit the sensor. So that's a quick description of those two modes. And basically aperture priority is great for depth of field, it's great for getting blurry backgrounds and your subject in focus. So that's where the real creativity comes in with aperture priority. And the last one to look at is M for manual mode. And what that means is exactly what it means. It means you get to choose all of the settings on the camera. You have 3 settings when it comes to exposure that affects exposure, and it's called the exposure triangle. It tells me I'm in M for manual, and it means that I can pick the shutter speed, the aperture and the ISO for the shot that I'm taking, and that's all 3 areas of the exposure triangle, so I can pick whatever exposure I want to take that photo. So that is your full manual control, you are in full control of the camera. So that's basically the semi-automatic modes. Just quickly going back past the automatic mode, you have got these other scene modes which you'll recognise from point and shoots and things like that. And then you've got like no flash, and there's video mode at the end as well. Okay, so if you prefer and you're used to these, that's obviously why they're on entry level cameras, is because you are very used to those from point and shoots. So if you want to carry on using those modes for a little bit in conjunction with automatic, then feel free, and then when you're ready and you want to move on, then have a go at one of the semi-automatic modes.
Okay, so after going through all those modes, I said I'd let you know what I started with and what I would suggest for you as well. It's totally up to you. It's obviously your choice, and you can start with whatever mode you'd like. But from my point of view, and what I started with was aperture priority mode. I felt that that was the most creative for me and gave me the most back. When I took a photo, I was like, oh great, I really like that, and it really spurred me on to learn more and do more with my camera. So basically using depth of field and using, say, still life to practice on, just set some stuff up on the table, go through the different apertures that you can use, take some shots and just see what it does to it, see how the background can blur out or it can all be the same, and that's a great way of learning, a first step of learning how your camera works. That would be my suggestion, but it's totally up to you. You can use whichever one of those modes that you want. Any questions, put them in the comments below and we'll work through those. So, hope you got something out of that. I hope that's 3 basic foundation steps to help you to learn your camera and get more out of it and take better photos. So, if you enjoyed this video and if you liked it, then please give it a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. And if you haven't already, then consider subscribing to the channel and you won't miss another video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.